Kara Remington dropped to her knees on the glossy marble floor, yanked off the printer's side panel, and muttered under her breath, "You've got to be kidding me." It was jammed again, for the third time this week. And no one in this posh uptown office building seemed to know how to fix a basic printer. She tugged out a crumpled piece of paper, wrinkled her nose at the smell of hot toner, and reached in deeper, her sleeve brushing against the heat of the machine. She didn't notice the man watching her from the glass doorway behind her. She definitely didn't know he was a millionaire, or that he owned the entire building. Elian Drake stood frozen, briefcase in hand, one brow lifted as he watched the woman crouched in front of the printer. She wore dark jeans, a simple black tee, and her hair was tied in a messy ponytail that bounced every time she shifted. She didn't look like anyone who belonged in his building, which meant she interested him already. "You planning to fight it or fix it?" he asked, stepping inside. Kara startled, banging her elbow on the edge of the tray. "Jesus," she muttered, turning around and blinking up at him. "You scared me." He smiled, amused and something else he couldn't place. "Sorry, didn't mean to sneak up on you." She stood up, brushing her hands on her thighs. "Printer's good as dead, but I've got one more trick up my sleeve." "You work here?" he asked, even though he already knew the answer. She wasn't in the tenant directory. No. I work for TechFix. Office equipment repair," she said, pointing to the logo on her chest. "This printer belongs to the marketing firm on the 15th floor. Elian glanced down at the machine, then back at her. "You're good at this?" Kara tilted her head. "Are you always this nosy?" He chuckled, held up his hands. "Only when I see something interesting." She narrowed her eyes but didn't look away. "Okay, nosy guy. What do you do around here?" "I own the place." She snorted. "Yeah, sure you do." He didn't respond, just smiled. Kara crouched again, her fingers flying over the printer's guts like she'd built it herself. Elian leaned against the doorway, watching her. Something about the way she moved, confident, focused, not trying to impress anyone, kept his attention locked. A minute later, the printer whirred back to life. Kara stood and dusted her palms. "You're welcome," she said, flashing him a grin. "Your precious building is safe again." Elian took a step closer. "What's your name?" "Kara." "Elian." She shook his hand, her grip firm. "Nice to meet you, Elian. Even if you were full of it. I wasn't joking about owning the building. Right?" She laughed. "And I'm Beyonce." He tilted his head, intrigued. "Have dinner with me." Kara blinked. "Sorry, what?" He shrugged. "You fixed my printer. I owe you." "It wasn't your printer." He grinned. "Still, I'm impressed." She hesitated, searching his face. He didn't look like a creep. He looked clean-cut, expensive watch, tailored suit, but also like he was used to getting what he wanted. "Look, I don't usually go out with strangers who flirt over dead printers." "Then it's perfect," he said. "Let's not be strangers." Kara stared at him for a second longer, then shook her head, chuckling. "You're persistent." "I'm patient," he said, "but I won't beg." "Good," she said, turning to pack up her tools. "Because I'm not saying yes." Elian watched her go, her ponytail swinging as she walked out without a second glance. He couldn't stop smiling. 2 days later, Kara got a call to fix another printer. Same building, different floor. She stepped into the corner office and froze. "Elian," she said, arms crossed. "You sabotaged this one, didn't you?" He leaned against his desk, a fresh espresso in his hand. "Now why would I do that?" She gave him a look that said she wasn't buying it. He just smiled and said, "Printer's jammed again. Thought you might be the only one smart enough to fix it." She rolled her eyes, but her lips twitched. "You're ridiculous. And you're still here." Kara grumbled under her breath and got to work, ignoring the way Elian watched her like she was solving a puzzle he couldn't quite figure out. When she finished, she stood and looked him dead in the eye. "Dinner. One time. That's it." Elian's grin spread slowly. "Deal." He didn't take her to some chain restaurant. He took her to a rooftop terrace lit with string lights and candles overlooking the skyline. A private chef served them seared scallops and truffle risotto. Kara stared at the city, then back at him. This is way too much. I disagree, he said simply, handing her a glass of wine. You always do things like this? Only when I really want to impress someone. She sipped, her cheeks flushing. It's working. Halfway through dessert, she leaned back in her chair and asked, so what's your story? Really? Elian looked at her for a long moment. I built a software company when I was 24. Sold it at 28. Now I invest. Properties, startups, people. Her eyes widened. You're serious? I told you. I own the building. She stared at him, stunned. You really are a millionaire? Technically. Kara let out a short laugh. Great. I had to go and fix a rich guy's printer. You didn't just fix it, he said, leaning closer. You made me want to know everything about the woman who could. She swallowed hard. You don't even know me. I know you're real. You didn't fake a smile. You didn't care who I was. I haven't met someone like you in years. Kara looked away, her chest tight. I don't want to rush anything, he said softer. But I'd like to see you again. She met his eyes. You're serious? I don't play games, Kara. She nodded slowly. Okay. Let's see what happens. Elian smiled at her like he already knew exactly what would. The elevator doors slid open to reveal a hallway lined with pale wood paneling and hushed luxury. Kara stepped out tentatively, clutching the strap of her tool bag. She hadn't been called for repair work this time. Elian had invited her up personally. Not to the office. To his penthouse. She hadn't said yes right away. In fact, she'd laughed when he casually asked if she liked live jazz and French food, then added, I have a better setup at home. But curiosity won. And now she was standing in a hallway that smelled faintly of bergamot and money. A tall man with dark, polished shoes and an earpiece opened the door before she even knocked. Miss Remington, he said smoothly, stepping aside. Inside, Kara's breath caught. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city like a living painting. A grand piano stood in the corner near a fireplace that flickered low and warm. The furniture was modern but not cold, plush textures, soft lighting. A string quartet played softly in the background from a recessed sound system, and near the balcony, Elian stood, sleeves rolled up, a glass of something amber in his hand. You came, he said. I almost didn't, Kara replied, stepping inside. It's not every day a guy you barely know invites you to a place that looks like it belongs in a Bond movie. Glad you were curious enough to find out, he said, motioning toward the kitchen where a marble island gleamed under pendant lights. You hungry? Depends, she said, narrowing her eyes playfully. Is this a date? Or am I here to fix your dishwasher? Well, if it breaks, I know who to call, he said, pouring her a drink. But tonight, you're off the clock. She took the glass, watching him. Do people usually say yes to you this easily? Not always. But I'm not usually this interested. They sat at the island, where two place settings had already been arranged. A private chef emerged from the back, said a polite hello, then returned to his quiet work with practiced efficiency. Dishes were served one after another, delicate, flavorful, plated like art. Kara picked up a fork and glanced at Elian. You're not worried this is too much? For someone else? Maybe. For you? No. I'm still not used to people doing this kind of thing for me, she admitted. I grew up in a neighborhood where pizza night was a luxury. He nodded, his expression unreadable. I didn't grow up with any of this either. My dad worked at a tire shop. Mom cleaned houses. What I have now, I built it. From scratch. Kara blinked. So, you didn't inherit all this? No trust fund. No family business. Just an idea and a lot of sleepless nights. She leaned back, surprised. That's not what I expected. Let me guess, he said. You thought I was born with a silver spoon shoved somewhere unpleasant? Something like that, she admitted, grinning. I get that a lot, he said, setting down his glass. But I know what it's like to watch the electric bill pile up. I know what it's like to have a landlord bang on the door at midnight. Kara's voice softened. So why hide that? I don't. Most people just don't ask. She looked at him differently now, the tailored shirt and expensive watch fading into the background. You're not what I expected either. They moved to the living room, drinks in hand, the music low and smooth. Kara curled her legs beneath her on the oversized couch, her shoes kicked off. Elian sat across from her, one ankle crossed over his knee. You said you invest in people, she said. What does that mean? I look for people with potential, people who are overlooked because they don't fit into neat boxes. I help them get started. Why? Because someone once did it for me, he said. A woman I met at a conference. She listened to my pitch when no one else would. Wrote the first check that launched my company. Changed my life. Kara was quiet for a moment. That's rare. I know. That's why I try to be that person for someone else now. She watched him with a different kind of intensity. You're not just trying to impress me, are you? No, he said. I'm trying to be honest with you. Kara stood and walked to the window, the skyline glittering below. I'm not used to all this. The view. The food. The honesty. I don't need you to be used to it, he said, joining her. I just want you to be yourself. You barely know me, she said, turning to face him. I know enough to want to, he said, voice lower now, more certain. They stood close, just inches apart. The tension between them shifted, no longer playful but charged, alive. Then Kara's phone rang, sharp and sudden. She pulled it from her back pocket, glanced at the screen, then silenced it. It's just work, she said, sliding it away again. You sure you're okay being here? He asked. I wouldn't have come if I wasn't, she said. Elian didn't move. Neither did she. And then, slowly, like gravity pulling them together, he leaned in. When their lips met, it wasn't explosive. It was quiet. Certain, like a promise made without words. She pulled back first, breath uneven. That shouldn't have happened. Why not? Because I don't do this, she said. I don't get swept up. You're not being swept, he said. You're choosing. She stared at him, heartbeat hammering in her ears. And what if I choose wrong? Then we figure it out, he said. Together. Kara turned back to the window, needing space to breathe. Elian didn't push. He just walked to the bar, poured himself water, and gave her time. She hated how much she wanted to believe him. He wasn't just charming. He was deliberate, steady. And that scared her more than anything, because she wasn't used to men who stayed still when things got real. She was used to being left behind. And he looked like the kind of man who chased what he wanted. But she didn't know if she could risk being wanted and then forgotten. Not again. Rain tapped lightly against the windows of Kara's apartment as she stared at the email on her cracked laptop screen. Elian had sent over a contract. Not for romance. For business. A proposal to consult on an in-house equipment streamlining project for one of his tech subsidiaries. The salary listed was more than she made in 6 months. The length, 12 weeks. Flexible hours. Fully remote. Generous bonus on completion. She hadn't asked for it. Hadn't even hinted she wanted more than what she already had. They hadn't spoken since that night in his penthouse when she'd kissed him and promptly panicked. Now here he was offering her a lifeline disguised as a professional opportunity. She didn't know whether to be flattered or furious. Her phone buzzed. She ignored it and paced across the room, stepping over a pile of invoices she hadn't opened yet. Her stomach twisted. She couldn't afford to turn it down, but accepting it felt like stepping into a room with no exit. 2 hours later, she showed up at his office. Not the penthouse. The actual office. A floor she hadn't been on before. The receptionist buzzed her through without question, and when the elevator doors opened, Elian was already waiting. I didn't expect you to come in, he said, adjusting his cufflinks but not looking surprised. I didn't expect a job offer to show up in my inbox without a conversation, Kara replied, stepping out. Is this your idea of flirting? No, he said. It's my idea of respect. She tilted her head. You think offering me a contract I didn't ask for is respect? I think recognizing your value is, he said. I needed a consultant. You're overqualified for the role, but you're the only person I trust not to waste my time. You trust me? She repeated, arms folded. I do, he said, even when you don't trust me back. She exhaled slowly, pulse still uneven from the elevator ride. You could have just called. I didn't think you'd answer, he said. You've been avoiding me because I needed space. You made things complicated. Elian nodded once. I don't regret that night. I didn't say you should, Kara said. But I didn't expect you to follow it up with a job offer. I didn't expect you to disappear. She took a step forward, eyes locked on his. I wasn't disappearing. I was thinking about whether this thing between us even makes sense. Does it have to? He asked. Or does it just have to matter? She hesitated, searching his face. You don't scare easy, do you? Not when I know what I want. Kara looked around the office. Sleek glass walls, polished concrete floors, a panoramic view of the city. It wasn't cold, it was calculated. Elian's world ran on precision. People like you don't usually take chances on people like me, she said. Then it's good I'm not like most people, he replied. She shook her head, half laughing. You're exhausting. And you're impossible, he said. But I haven't stopped thinking about you since the day you cursed at a printer. Kara leaned against the edge of his desk. I need to know this offer isn't some elaborate way to keep me close. It's not, he said. It's me asking for your expertise. And hoping you'll give me more than that. She studied him, then said quietly, I haven't said yes yet. I know. And if I did, I'd want boundaries. Set them, he said. I'll respect everyone. Kara took a long breath. Fine. I'll do it. But I'm not promising anything beyond the work. Understood, he said, stepping back just enough to give her space. She turned to leave, but paused at the door. I don't want special treatment. You'll get none, he said. But you'll get my attention. That's harder to come by. That night, Kara sat at her desk, rereading the contract before signing. She didn't feel settled, but she felt something else. Determined. She could handle this. She'd worked under pressure before. Just not while trying to ignore the man who'd kissed her like he meant it. The next week passed in a blur of systems audits, virtual meetings, and midnight research. Kara didn't see Elian again until the Friday check-in. He joined the video call late, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up. She'd been mid-sentence when he appeared, and for a second, she forgot what she'd been saying. Continue, he said, meeting her gaze through the camera. She cleared her throat and finished her analysis. When she ended the call, her heart was racing. He messaged her directly an hour later, asking if she'd join him for a walk. She said yes before she could talk herself out of it. They met outside the building just before sunset. The city was gold and quiet in that strange hour between rush and evening. Elian didn't say anything at first. He just walked beside her, hands in his coat pockets, matching her pace. You look tired, she said eventually. I am. Rough week. Only when I wasn't talking to you. Kara looked away, trying not to smile. You're not making this easy, you know? I'm not trying to. I'm trying to be honest. They walked past a park, the trees just starting to lose their leaves. I got asked to speak at a tech summit in Tokyo next month, he said. I haven't accepted yet. Why not? I don't want to be 10,000 miles away when I'm trying to build something here. Kara stopped walking. What are you building? He turned to face her. Something real. Something that doesn't care about timing or fear or whether it makes sense on paper. She stared at him, hands clenched at her sides. I'm not ready. I'm not asking you to be, he said. I'm asking you to stop running. She didn't answer. Just stood there, the wind catching her hair, the city alive around them. I'll walk you back, he said finally. She nodded and they walked in silence. When they reached her apartment building, she turned to him. Don't wait for me. I'm not waiting, he said. I'm showing up. Every time. He didn't lean in. Didn't ask to come up. Just stood there, steady and unshaken. And for the first time, Kara didn't feel like she was being pulled into something. She felt like she was being seen. The conference room was silent except for the low hum of the HVAC and Kara's pen tapping against the edge of her notepad. She wasn't taking notes. She wasn't even pretending to. Her mind was somewhere else entirely. Across from her, Elian was speaking with the project team, sharp and composed, eyes occasionally flicking her way. He didn't linger. He didn't need to. She could feel the weight of his attention even when it wasn't visible. When the meeting ended, people filed out in pairs, murmuring about timelines and deadlines. Kara stood slowly, gathering her things. Elian waited until the last person left before speaking. "I need 5 minutes," he said. She didn't look up. "We've been doing fine keeping things professional. I'm not here about that." She paused, then nodded once. "Okay." He walked her out of the room and led her down a hallway she hadn't been through before. They stopped in front of a door with no visible signage. He unlocked it and stepped aside for her to enter. Inside was a small library, dark with shelves, leather chairs, a single lamp glowing amber. There were no windows, no distractions. Only quiet. "I come here when I need to think," he said, closing the door behind them. Kara set her bag down on the nearest chair but didn't sit. "Is this where you go when you're avoiding people?" "No. It's where I go when I want to tell the truth without everyone watching." She turned to face him, arms crossed. "So, tell it." He looked at her, eyes steady. "I've spent years protecting what I built. Every move calculated. Every risk weighed. But you," he stopped, exhaled. "You made me reckless in the best way." Kara's voice was quiet. "That scares me. It scares me too. But I'm not afraid of being scared anymore. I'm afraid of losing something that actually matters. You don't even know what this is yet. I know it's real." She sat down finally, folding her hands in her lap. "I've spent so long trying to build something stable. I can't afford to have my life ripped apart by someone who changes his mind." His voice was gentler now. "I'm not that man. And I don't want to change anything about your life. I want to be a part of it if you'll let me. I don't need saving. I know. That's not what I'm offering." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. He handed it to her without a word. Kara unfolded it carefully. It was a letter handwritten, dated nearly a decade ago. At the bottom, it was signed by a woman named Evelyn Drake. Her handwriting was graceful, looped. "She was my mother," Elian said. "She wrote that to me the day I turned 18. She told me never to forget what mattered more than money: integrity, connection, love that didn't have conditions." Kara read the letter again, then folded it and handed it back. "Why show me this? Because I want you to know where I come from. Not the boardrooms and penthouses. The real place. The one I still carry." She stood and walked to the bookshelf, running her fingers along the spines. "You're not what I expected." "You keep saying that," he said, walking closer. "But I think it's because you expected someone who only cared about winning." She turned. "And you don't. I care about not losing the one person who looked at me and didn't see a number." Her throat tightened, but she didn't look away. "You're not going to stop, are you?" "No," he said. "But I'll wait as long as you need." She stepped toward him, the space between them shrinking. "Then stop waiting." Elian didn't hesitate. He reached for her, and this time, when their lips met, it wasn't cautious. It was rooted in something deeper. Certain. Like the beginning of something solid. Later that night, Kara stood on the rooftop of the office building, the wind tugging at her coat. Elian stood beside her, hands in his pockets. "I used to come up here when I first started fixing things," she said. "I'd look at the skyline and think someday I'll belong somewhere up there." "You already do," he said. "With or without me." She looked up at him, face calm. "I want to build something real. But it has to be on my terms." He nodded. "Then let's build it together. No shortcuts. No pressure." "I don't want grand gestures," she added. "I know," he said, pulling out a small, velvet box. She blinked. "You're kidding. It's not what you think." He opened it to reveal a delicate chain with a single, silver gear charm. Tiny. Unassuming. "I had it made," he said. "To remind you that you're the one who started everything in motion." Kara stared at the charm for a long moment, then reached out and closed his hand around it. "I'll wear it," she said softly. "But only if you understand what it means." "That I'm not the one fixing things anymore?" he asked. She smiled. that you never needed to be fixed in the first place. Weeks passed. Their project wrapped. The final report was delivered. Kara turned down another contract this time because she was starting something of her own. A repair and consulting firm with 2 partners and a waiting list of clients. Elian didn't interfere. He only showed up on opening day with a bouquet of wildflowers and a signed agreement to outfit all his buildings with her systems. And when he kissed her in front of everyone under the new sign she'd installed herself, no one said a word. Because by then, everyone knew. She wasn't the woman who fixed a broken printer anymore. She was the woman who changed everything. And the millionaire who watched her work? He never looked away again. The rain had stopped hours ago, but the streets were still slick with reflections of passing headlights as Kara stepped out of the town car and stared up at the stone steps of the gala venue. She adjusted the collar of her tailored navy jumpsuit, the sharp lines hugging her frame with quiet confidence. She had chosen it herself, refusing Elian's offer of a stylist. Tonight she wasn't someone's guest. She was the woman beside the man who built empires, and she'd built something of her own, too. Inside, the atmosphere buzzed with low voices and crystal clinks. The elite of the city had gathered to celebrate the launch of Elian's philanthropic foundation, a project he'd quietly been assembling for months. One designed to fund underdog entrepreneurs and overlooked creators. He hadn't told anyone Kara helped design the grant system. He didn't need to. The moment she walked into the ballroom, heads turned not because she was unfamiliar, but because she was unmistakably part of his world now. Elian stood near the grand piano, deep in conversation with a venture capitalist and a museum director. When he saw her, his posture shifted subtly. Not possessive. Present. Like the room didn't fully exist without her in it. She crossed the polished floor with deliberate steps, nodding at a few familiar faces she'd met during project meetings. Elian excused himself and met her halfway. "You're late," he said, offering her his arm. "You didn't want to walk in with me?" "I wanted everyone to see you," he said. "Then watch me walk toward you." Kara took his arm, leaning in just enough to let her lips brush his cheek. "You're absurd. And yet here you are." They made their way toward the main seating area where a string quartet played beneath a chandelier the size of a small car. Guests were beginning to settle, glittering in gowns and tuxedos, but Elian led her past the tables and straight to the stage. "What are you doing?" she whispered, her hand tightening on his. "I'm doing something I should have done the moment I knew," he said, not stopping. "Known what?" He stepped onto the stage, his hand still around hers. A soft hush fell over the room. The music faded out. The lights dimmed slightly, casting a golden glow across the crowd. Elian turned to face the guests, but his words weren't for them. "When I started this foundation, I thought I was creating a way to give back. To return the favor someone once gave me. But what I didn't realize is that what I was truly missing wasn't another cause, it was someone to build it with." Kara's heart thudded in her ears. She tried to step back, but he held her gently in place. "This woman," he said, turning to her now, "saw me when I wasn't trying to be impressive. She challenged me, called me out, held her ground, and then she changed everything." A ripple of murmurs passed through the crowd. Elian reached into his jacket and pulled out a velvet box. Kara froze, her breath catching in her throat. He opened it, revealing a platinum ring with a single, luminous sapphire. "I'm not asking you to change your life for me. I love the life you've built. I just want to be in it, not around it. In it, every day." She stared at him, the room falling away. "You don't have to do this here." "I want to," he said. "Because if I can stand in front of the world and talk about funding dreams, then I should be brave enough to say mine out loud." Kara blinked, her voice unsteady. "You don't want safe and simple." "I want you," he said. "Exactly as you are." Her gaze dropped to the ring, then rose to meet his. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." The applause rose around them, but Elian didn't look away. He slid the ring onto her finger and pulled her into his arms as if she were the only person who'd ever mattered. Later, after the gala ended and the lights dimmed, they stood alone on the rooftop garden above the venue. The city sparkled below, and a breeze carried the scent of lavender and rain-soaked stone. "I wasn't sure you'd ask," she said, turning the ring slowly on her finger. I wasn't sure you'd say yes, he admitted. She leaned against him, her head resting beneath his chin. I'm still scared. So am I, he said. That's how I know it's real. She looked up at him. We've both built our own things. What happens now? We build together, he said. Not because we need to, but because we want to. Kara smiled. Not the cautious one she used to wear, but the one that came when the weight of doubt had finally lifted. Okay, she said. Let's start now. Kara's new office smelled like sawdust and fresh paint. The furniture had arrived that morning, and the sign bearing her company's name now hung proudly above the door. Her phone buzzed with new inquiries, and her inbox was already filling with referrals. She'd hired 2 techs and a project coordinator. She was booked out for 6 weeks. Elian arrived around noon, carrying lunch and 2 iced coffees. You're early, she said, accepting the drink. I missed you, he replied, setting the bag on her desk. And I wanted to see the place again without it filled with moving boxes. She gestured toward the empty client chairs. Still waiting on those. Already ordered a set, he said, sitting on the edge of her desk. You're not allowed to make business purchases for me. We've been over this. It was a gift, he said. From your fiancé. Kara rolled her eyes but didn't argue. He handed her a small envelope. This is for you too. She opened it and unfolded the paper. It was a deed. To a building. Not hers. What is this? A co-working space, he said. For women in trades. You mentioned last week you wanted to mentor more women like you. She looked up slowly. You listened. I always do. Her eyes filled, and for once she didn't try to hide it. You're ridiculous. And you're everything I never knew I needed. The wedding was held on a cliffside estate overlooking the sea. A private ceremony, just friends, family, and the people who'd stood beside them when things weren't glossy. Kara wore a dress with clean lines and no frills. Elian wore a navy suit instead of black, because she said it brought out his eyes. There were no fireworks, no grand speeches, just a quiet vow. I choose you, she whispered, her hand in his, not for what you've built, but for who you are when no one's watching. And I choose you, he said, voice steady, not because I need someone to stand beside me, but because I never want to stand without you again. They kissed, simple and certain, and the ocean roared beneath them like applause. Years later, Kara stood at a panel for women founders, answering questions about resilience, leadership, and how she got started. A young woman raised her hand and asked, what was the turning point for you? Kara smiled, her eyes drifting toward the back of the room where Elian stood. Their daughter balanced on his hip, her tiny hand gripping the edge of his suit jacket. The moment I stopped fixing broken things, Kara said, and started building something new with someone who saw all of me and stayed. The room erupted in applause, but she only had eyes for the man who never stopped walking toward her. And in that moment, under 1,000 lights and a future wide open, she knew this was everything she'd never dared to hope for. And it was just the beginning.